What happens when the man who signs your paycheck walks beside you in steel-toe boots, and you don't know it's him? Victor Ellison, owner of a 17-location recycling and waste sorting company, leaned over his laptop in the early hours of a rainy Monday. His coffee had gone cold, but his eyes stayed locked on a spreadsheet filled with rising injury reports and growing worker turnover at the Eastbridge facility, the 11th location he had acquired 7 years ago when he bought the entire chain from its previous owner, a quiet man who'd run the business old school and hands-off. It wasn't one complaint or a specific red flag that sent Victor into action. It was the pattern. Numbers were off, people weren't staying, and the last 3 site evaluations had been rescheduled by the location's manager. Staffing conflict, always the excuse. Victor didn't like getting fed lines. He'd never met most of the crew at Eastbridge. With over 200 employees across the company, it wasn't unusual. None of the workers there would recognize him. His photo wasn't on any wall, and his name wasn't on the trucks. That's how it had been since day one. So he called his assistant, told her to clear his week, and 3 days later he walked through the gates of the Eastbridge facility as Don, a new hire brought on for floor sorting and bin checks under a temporary staffing agency. The disguise was solid graying beard, thick glasses, high-vis jacket 2 sizes too big, and a backstory about being laid off from a construction job upstate. No one blinked twice. The place smelled like wet cardboard and rust. Machines clanked loud enough to rattle your ribs. Victor kept his head down as he was walked through the safety briefing by a young woman named Pillar Edwards. Sharp, kind eyes, firm voice, and no nonsense. Stay out of the compactor zone. If you see glass outside the bins, yell for cleanup. Don't try to grab it. Got it, she said, handing him gloves. You'll be with me today. We're short 2 sorters, so we'll be moving fast. Got it, Victor said. Appreciate the rundown. Don't worry, Pillar said as she led him to the line. You'll sweat, but we don't leave anyone behind. By noon, Victor's shoulders were burning and his gloves soaked through. The conveyor belt rattled nonstop, feeding them a stream of paper, cans, and broken promises. Pillar worked like a machine, but never let her discipline slip. She kept an eye on the others, stepped in when one of the older guys needed help, cracked a joke when things got tense. She was a quiet leader, and everyone on that side of the floor clearly respected her. Then, just after lunch, something shifted. A loud bark of laughter echoed from the far side of the facility. Near the plastics corner, a bigger guy in a faded red hoodie stood over a young man who was trying to lift a bin onto a cart. The young man's hands trembled slightly as he tried to grip the edges, and his right leg dragged just a bit as he stepped. Victor watched the guy in the red hoodie he'd been introduced earlier as Chase. The site's foreman mimicked the dragging leg, his arms flopping like noodles. "Hey, Kyle," Chase shouted, voice dripping with mockery. "You gonna make it to the bin before it hits next Tuesday, or you want me to tape a motor to your foot?" Victor froze. Pillar did too. Kyle's face went red. He looked down, mumbled something, and tried again to lift the bin. The other workers looked away. Victor turned to Pillar. "That normal here?" Pillar's jaw clenched. "That's Chase. Been here 9 years. Doesn't think anyone can touch him. Management turns a blind eye." Victor's stomach turned. He knew what he had to do, but not today. "Come on," Pillar said, her voice low. "Let's get back to our line. Kyle doesn't need more eyes on him." Victor nodded. But inside, something had snapped. He'd built this company to give people second chances, not to let power poison the floor. That night, Victor sat in his motel room staring at the video he'd quietly filmed on his phone. Kyle being mocked, Pillar standing frozen, Chase laughing like it was a joke. He wasn't sleeping that night. And tomorrow he'd be back on the line, but not just to work. He was watching. By the time Victor clocked in the next morning, the rain had turned to a sticky fog that clung to everything. The yard smelled stronger like damp paper and sour milk, and the gravel beneath his boots squelched as he crossed into the sorting bay. The rhythm of the place had already begun, forklifts humming, bins clanking, voices muffled by ear protection. No one looked up when he joined the line again, which suited him fine. He kept his head low, hands moving, eyes watching. The first thing he noticed was that Kyle wasn't there. Pillar handed him gloves again, wordlessly. She looked tired more so than the day before. Her movements were precise, but slower, and she kept glancing toward the plastics zone, where Chase was leaning against a stack of pallets, talking loudly to two workers who were supposed to be loading mixed materials. Victor leaned close during a quieter stretch on the belt. "Kyle out today?" he asked. Pillar didn't answer right away. She flicked a crushed can off the belt, then said, he called in, said his hip was locking up. She paused. "He didn't sound right. I think he's done." Victor didn't push. He didn't need to. The look in Pillar's eyes told him plenty. He moved through the day with her, rotating between sorting, bin swaps, and a stint near the glass line when one of the regulars twisted an ankle stepping off a platform. No one called for backup. They just shifted people around and fell further behind. By mid-afternoon, the line was backing up. Someone upstream had jammed a bin too full, and the conveyor was sputtering. Chase strolled by, finally moving, and barked at Pillar. "You gonna fix that, or should I call someone who knows what they're doing?" Pillar wiped her hands on her pants and turned without a word. She climbed up to the jam point and started clearing the blockage by hand. Victor saw her wince as she yanked a twisted metal bar free. Her left wrist trembled slightly afterward. Chase turned to Victor. "New guy. Don, right?" Victor nodded, keeping his face neutral. "Lot of people can't hack it here," Chase said. "Gets real clear, real fast who's soft. You planning on sticking around, or are we wasting training time?" Victor didn't change his tone. "I show up. I do the work. That enough?" Chase stared at him a second longer than necessary. Then he gave a short laugh and walked off, muttering something to the two crew members who followed him like satellites. Victor turned back to the line, but inside, something twisted. Chase wasn't just a bully, he was a drain. He didn't lift, didn't sort, didn't sweat. He watched and judged and made sure everyone else knew he had power. Later, in the break room, Victor sat across from a man in his 60s named Benny, who wore hearing aids and had a limp that made every step a calculation. Benny didn't speak much, but he was friendly, offering half a sandwich to Victor when he saw he hadn't brought lunch. "You work this site long?" Victor asked. 8 years, Benny said. "Longer than most last," Victor nodded. "You always run this short on people," Benny chewed slowly. "Used to be 3 on each line, then 2, now 1.5 if you're lucky." "No hiring, people come, then they see how it is." Benny shrugged. "Then they don't come back." Victor let that sit. He didn't press. He just watched Benny struggle to stand again when the break bell buzzed and felt something settle low in his chest. The final hours passed in a blur of repetition. Victor's back ached. His gloves were torn. He counted 6 times when someone had to leave their post to cover another station. At one point, a bin tipped and spilled glass across the floor. No one shut down the line. Pillar just threw a cone near it and worked around the mess. After shift, Victor lingered near the lockers. He caught sight of Chase again, this time berating a young woman who'd been on the cardboard line for dropping a bale too early. "You want to cost us another warning," Chase snapped. "Start thinking with your head, not your phone." The girl didn't argue, she just nodded quickly and left. Victor stepped closer. "Something wrong with the system?" he asked casually. Chase turned. "What?" "Just looked like she hit the button too early." Chase narrowed his eyes. "You got something to say about how I run this?" Victor held his gaze. "Just seems like you spend a lot of time talking." "Not much time helping." Chase stepped closer. "You want to last here, you better learn how things work. People like her, they don't listen unless you get loud." "Maybe they don't listen because they stopped trusting you." Chase's jaw tightened. His voice dropped. "You think you got this place figured out after 2 days? You're a temp. Keep your head down." Victor didn't answer. He didn't need to. He left the locker room and walked out across the darkening yard, heart pounding not from fear but from clarity. That night, he reviewed the camera footage from the floor. He had access to all of it through the company's central server. He saw Pillar lifting alone while others stood idle. He saw Chase leaving the floor for nearly 40 minutes mid-shift, disappearing into the office wing where the site manager never emerged. He saw Benny struggling to move a loaded cart while 3 younger workers ignored him entirely. He made notes. Times, faces, patterns, and then he called HR. "I want an immediate audit at Eastbridge," he said. "No warning, no prep. I want full employee interviews. I want Chase pulled from the floor effective tomorrow morning. Full suspension pending review." The director hesitated. "Do you want us to wait until you? No, do it now. And send a rep from legal. I want everything documented." He hung up, then called his assistant. "I need an all-hands meeting at Eastbridge. First thing Friday. Management, floor staff, everyone. I'll be leading it." She didn't ask why. She just said, "Yes, sir." Victor sat back in the stiff motel chair, eyes burning, hands still stained from the line. He'd seen enough. Now they were going to see him. Friday morning came heavy with cloud cover, the air still and oddly quiet around the Eastbridge facility. Inside the break room, every seat was taken. Some stood along the back wall, arms folded, heads craned toward the front. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead. The usual banter and shift chatter were absent. Instead, there was a pulsing uncertainty, like the building itself was holding its breath. Victor stood before them not as Don, the temp in oversized gloves, but as himself. He wore a plain black jacket, no logos, no titles, just his presence was enough. A few jaws tensed, others looked away. When he spoke, his voice was calm but cut through the room. "My name is Victor Ellison. I own this company." No one moved. "For the past 3 days, I've been working among you as Don. I've run the line. I've hauled bins. I've watched and listened." He let that hang a moment. A ripple of realization moved through the room. Eyes darted to one another, some wide, some narrowed. "I didn't come here to catch people off guard," he continued. "I came here because something wasn't sitting right, turnover's too high, safety claims are up. And no one would give me a straight answer about why." He paused and scanned the room slowly. "Now I know." He turned toward the side wall where Chase stood, arms crossed, face unreadable. "Chase, you've been suspended effective 2 days ago. You are now officially terminated, effective immediately." A murmur rose. Chase's mouth twitched. "You serious?" he said. Victor didn't blink. "I've reviewed the footage, I've read the incident reports, I've spoken with HR. Your conduct toward employees, including mocking a disabled worker on shift, failing to assist during critical safety situations, and fostering a culture of intimidation, is in direct violation of company code. You're done here." Chase's nostrils flared. "I've been here 9 years. I know this floor better than anyone, and you used that to make yourself untouchable," Victor said, voice firmer now. "You don't get to hide behind seniority while others carry the weight. You've disrespected this team for too long. You can leave now." Chase stood still for a beat too long, then turned and walked out without another word. The door closed behind him with a soft thump. Victor looked back to the room. No one spoke. Some stared at the floor. Others looked toward Pillar, who stood near the coffee machine, jaw set, unreadable. "I know there are more issues," Victor said. "This isn't solved because one person walked out. But let's start here." He motioned to a woman seated near the front, Lisa, from the corporate HR team, who had arrived quietly an hour earlier. "Lisa will be staying on site for the next week. She's meeting with each of you individually. Everything you say will be documented. You will not be punished for speaking honestly." A man near the back interjected. "And what happens after we talk? Is this just for show?" Victor met his eyes. "If you feel like you've been ignored, I understand why. That's on me. I built a company and let distance grow between the top and the floor. That ends now." He looked back at the group. "We're short-staffed. I've seen it. People are rotating between stations with no support. That's not sustainable. I've already authorized new hires. A dedicated recruiter will be here Monday, and no one works solo until staffing is stabilized." Someone exhaled loudly, but no one clapped. There was no celebration. Just a quiet, cautious shift in the air. Victor turned toward Pillar. "Pillar, can I speak with you privately?" She nodded once, then followed him into the supervisor's office, which had been empty since the site manager called in sick that morning without explanation. Inside, Victor shut the door gently. "You should have been running this floor," he said. "Not covering for people." "I wasn't covering for anyone," she replied, voice steady. "I was just trying to keep the place from falling apart." "I know, that's the problem," he gestured toward the nearby desk. "Sit, please." She hesitated, then did. "I read your personnel file last night," Victor said. "You've never once filed a complaint. You've never taken more than one sick day in a row. You've trained nearly every person that comes through here. Why didn't you say anything?" Pillar stared at him for a moment, then looked away. "Because it doesn't matter who says it, it's who hears it, and I didn't think anyone was listening." Victor nodded slowly. "You were right, no one was, until now." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded paper. "That's a promotion offer, floor operations lead. Full-time, salaried, with authority to oversee all shift scheduling, training, and safety compliance. You'll report directly to regional ops, not the site manager. And you'll have one of the new hires as your backup within 2 weeks." Pillar's brows lifted, but she didn't reach for the paper. "What about the manager, the one who's never here? He's being reviewed. I don't make assumptions, but absentee leadership isn't leadership. If he's not back by Monday, interim control shifts to you." She nodded once, slowly. "I didn't ask for this. I know." "That's why you deserve it." He stood. "I'll let you read that in peace," he said, "but I hope you'll say yes." He left the room, pulled the door shut behind him, and stepped back into the hallway. Down the corridor, he found Benny sitting alone at a folding table, sipping coffee from a dented thermos. Victor pulled a chair beside him. "You've been here a long time," Victor said. Benny nodded. "Long enough. I didn't realize until this week just how much strain this place has been under." Benny didn't respond right away. Then he said, "It wasn't always like this. Used to be more hands. More time to breathe." "I'm working on that." Benny looked at him, then said, "Don't fix this place from behind a desk. It don't work." Victor smiled faintly. "That's why I was out there." Benny nodded once, then sipped his coffee again. Victor stood and walked the floor alone for the next hour. The air still smelled like oil and damp cardboard, but it felt different now, quieter. He watched as people adjusted. There was no sudden ease, no magical calm, just a shift. A few longer glances, a few quieter voices. Kyle returned the next day. He didn't speak much, but he stayed. Victor made sure someone from HR met with him directly. A new pair of gloves and modified tools were waiting at his station, nothing fancy, just small adjustments that made the job possible again. By the end of the week, Victor no longer walked the floor as Don, but he still walked it. Not once from the catwalk above, always at eye level. 3 weeks after Victor's undercover visit, the East Bridge facility looked the same from the outside: faded aluminum siding, humming trailers, dust clinging to the chain link, but inside, the rhythm had changed. Not overnight, not all at once, but in permanent, deliberate steps. Pillar now stood at the center of the shift change huddle, clipboard in hand, eyes moving from one name to the next on the roster. She wore the same reinforced boots and work jacket as everyone else, but the way the crew looked at her had shifted. Not with fear. With attention. A different kind of authority earned, not inherited. Victor stood quietly near the wall, observing without ceremony. He'd been on site twice that week, sitting in on safety checks and quietly reviewing process logs. He no longer wore the temp badge. He didn't need to. But he made sure he walked in through the same gate everyone else used, steel toe boots hitting the same gravel. Pillar finished the assignments and dismissed the group. As people dispersed, she turned toward him. "You're early," she said, adjusting the strap on her glove. "I like seeing how things start," Victor replied. "You've shortened the huddle time. It used to run past the hour." "We tightened the checklist," she said. "Cut the fluff, kept what matters. They get on the floor faster and we don't lose 10 minutes of productivity every shift." He nodded. "Makes sense." She looked past him toward the rear loading zone. "We're still short 3 sorters. I've got a temp from corporate, but that's just for this week." I reviewed the recruitment reports, Victor said. We're shifting the job ad language. More emphasis on paid training and skill development. You were right, people weren't applying because it sounded like a dead-end job. Pillar crossed her arms. It felt like one for a while. He didn't argue. Instead, he handed her a folded sheet of paper. "What's this?" she asked. "Final version of the new compensation structure. You'll be the first site to implement it." She unfolded it slowly. Her eyes skimmed the bold lines: hourly increases at the 6-month and 1-year marks, a new bonus tier linked to safety and retention, and a formal leadership pathway for floor workers with cross-training. "This is real?" she asked. "Every site will have it by next quarter." "But Eastbridge leads the rollout." She handed it back. "Keep it. You'll need it for the next site." Victor didn't smile, but something in his posture relaxed. Out on the floor, Benny moved carefully between the compactors and the baler, now with a new push cart that had been retrofitted with a hydraulic lift. It wasn't fancy, but it saved him from having to bend his knees every time he loaded a bin. An ergonomic consultant had walked the floor with him 2 weeks ago and taken notes. The cart was the first result. "Hey, boss," Benny called, spotting Victor from across the floor. "That thing works. One pull and it lifts like nothing." "I'm glad," Victor said. "Let me know if it gives you trouble." Benny gave a short nod and went back to work, easing the cart forward with both hands and stepping carefully over a replaced section of flooring. Kyle had returned to a 4-day schedule, working alternating stations with modified tools. One of the new hires, a quiet man named Devon, had taken to shadowing him through most of the shift. Not because he had to, but because, as he'd explained to Pillar, he knows where everything gets stuck and he doesn't guess, he checks. Victor watched them from a distance, then turned toward the manager's office. Inside, the desk was clean. The previous site manager had officially resigned a week ago, following a formal investigation and 2 no-call absences. No one had fought to keep him. The door now bore a temporary placard, Pillar Edwards, acting ops lead. Lisa from HR sat at the desk, laptop open, her notes from the last round of interviews still up on the screen. She looked up as Victor entered. "Final reviews done," she said. "We're closing 4 cases from the site. 2 involved verbal harassment, 1 was a retaliation concern, and 1 was a mishandled safety report. All resolved. The workers involved were given direct updates. Nothing was buried." "Good," Victor said. "And the training? New supervisors will complete the in-person leadership module by the end of the month. That includes conflict resolution, escalation protocols, and compliance. Pillar's already reviewed the materials." Victor leaned against the wall, arms folded. "What did she say?" Lisa looked down at her notes. "It's a start, but none of it matters if you don't keep walking the floor." Victor exhaled through his nose. "She's right." Lisa closed her laptop. "You know, most owners don't come down like this. They visit once, make a speech, then disappear." "I don't run this company from a podium," Victor said. "If I wanted to do that, I'd be in a different line of work." She stood and gathered her things. "I'll send the final report to legal." No red flags left. As she left, Pillar entered, wiping her hands on a towel. "We've got a jam in the glass chute," she said. "Devon's working on it, but we'll need a maintenance check before second shift." "I'll have regional dispatch someone," Victor replied. She hesitated. "There's something else." He waited. "I found one of Chase's old logbooks buried in the bottom desk drawer. It had notes, nasty ones, about Kyle, about a few others. He kept track of people he didn't like, used different color codes." Victor's jaw tightened. "Did you read all of it?" "Enough." "I gave it to Lisa." He paused. "Thanks, that won't get overlooked." She nodded, then turned to go. "Pillar," he said before she reached the door. She looked back. "I've asked you to carry a lot, more than anyone should have to. When this site is fully staffed, when the new systems are permanent, you still want this role?" She didn't answer right away. "I didn't take it because I wanted it," she said. "I took it because it needed doing, but yeah, I want it now." "Then it's yours." "Officially?" She nodded once, then left without another word. That afternoon, Victor walked the perimeter of the yard. It was quiet, except for the dull echo of trucks backing into the dock. He paused beneath the old loading crane, the same one he'd stood by as dawn, watching Kyle get mocked by a man who no longer had a place here. He looked at his hands clean now, but still bearing the faint marks of the work. Then he looked out across the lot, where crews moved with purpose, no longer glancing over their shoulders. 3 weeks wasn't a fix. It wasn't even the start of one. It was a correction. A reckoning. A return to what he'd promised himself this company would be when he built it. And now, finally, it was his again.